What's up, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going? It's Dan here from Cry Noir. Hope you had a good Christmas, and I believe tonight's New Year's when you see this, so I hope you have a good night tonight. What with it being the holidays, and also me getting married, and in the US you've also had Thanksgiving, so neither me or Josh has been doing any work whatsoever towards the game or anything like that, and you'll also notice that a lot of the videos on the channel have sort of dried up at the moment. That's why we're doing the video we're doing now. I had a request to do this a little while back, which was just to go through some of my retro collection. It's a bit big for me to do the whole lot in one go, so I'm going to break that up. Also, I want to do this because it's the start of a new year. I've been collecting for about a year and a half now, so the first half year I wasn't really collecting very heavily, but it really started to kick off this last year, 2017. So we've come to the end of that, so I'm going to kind of make a log of where I am at the moment. And then obviously again in 18 I'll be able to see just how much extra we've got over this next year. Probably won't be a lot actually because there's a lot going on. But anyway, that's beside the point. This first video I'm going to be dealing with the Super Nintendo. Yes, what a beast of a machine this is. I have a reasonable collection. Hopefully I should be able to get that down there. I think I have a total of about 42 games. So we'll just do a quick recap of the system. Now, it was a real powerhouse when it came out. It really was. It's quite hard to explain just how powerful it was compared to other stuff. So I'll go through that as well. And you can't really understate just how powerful it was. It came out in Japan in 1990. And then came out in the US in 91, the back end of 1991, and then in the UK we got ours in 1992. The Sega Mega Drive, which is also a 16-bit, or Sega Genesis, is also a 16-bit system, but that came out 2 years prior to that. Now, so obviously in Japan, and that's across the board as well, so in Japan they got theirs in like 1988, or back end of 88, US got it 89, we got it 90. But you know, it's kind of, back then, technological advances were really big. So those extra 2 years in development made this a substantially more powerful machine than the Mega Drive. It really was. And that was sort of reflected in the games as well. We have to realise is what was coming out around about that sort of time in the kind of sort of PC sphere. Because the way it has been now for, well, a long time, for about 20, 30 years, and the PCs were always a good step ahead of the consoles. When you look at the stuff that was coming out, the really early titles that were coming out for the Super Nintendo, compared to what was coming out at the same time for the PC, the Super Nintendo was matching a real top-end PC, like a really high-powered PC. I mean, an example of like what came out sort of around about the 1990 for the PC, you had games like, for instance, Monkey Island came out in 1990, and that's like a point-and-click adventure that the Super Nintendo could easily handle that visually. Now, the thing that it wouldn't be able to handle is the size of the game, just because of the amount of data that was actually on there. But that's literally the only advantage that the PC had at that point, visually. Well, they hadn't started releasing kind of the 3D graphics cards, so it was just all on horsepower, on sort of CPU power. And yeah, there was not much in it at all. Same year, King's Quest V came out for the PC. Now that's a really pretty game, but again, with the exception of its actual size, you know, the amount that there was was nothing there that the Super Nintendo couldn't handle. And then also you've got to look at, I think games like Doom didn't come out for the PC until sort of 1993, so that's like another 3 years after the launch when it very first was locked down. So, I mean, that gives you an idea of just how quickly things were advancing. You know, and from 1990 to 1993, we went from games like Monkey Island and sort of, you know, point-and-click stuff like that to Doom. That's a huge leap, is that? And, you know, obviously the Mega Drive and the SNES fell right there in the middle. So it really was a very powerful machine for its time. And I just love it. I got a little bit of, I didn't get a lot of internet hate, but I got some comments from sort of people I work with and stuff about me berating the Super Nintendo over the Mega Drive and stuff. And like, I do prefer the Mega Drive, but that's only because I already grew up with it. I'm currently collecting more for the Super Nintendo than I am for the Mega Drive, and that's because I'm limited on space. So because I'm only buying cartridge only for SNES, then I can get an awful lot more games in the same amount of space as I can do for the Mega Drive. The reason I'm collecting for cartridge only is because the Super Nintendo, the games came out in cardboard sleeves that most people threw away. They rotted. They just got rid of them. So consequently, buying them boxed was prohibitively expensive. Even like a sort of a reasonable title that would go for sort of £20. Unboxed would suddenly go for like £60, £70 boxed and complete. Games that would go for around about, some of the rarer ones that would go for like £100. So say for instance, Turtles in Time in the UK goes for about £100 cartridge only. If you were to get that boxed, you would be hunting for absolutely forever to try and find a box copy, and when it did come up, it would be sort of £600-700, which is far too much. So I'm looking to try and get a complete set for all of the major cartridge-based consoles. So that's the NES, the SNES, the N64, the Master System, and the Mega Drive. I also do have a Jaguar and an Atari 2600, but I'm less concerned about getting complete sets with those. I want to get some titles, obviously, that I really want for those systems, but I'm not bothered about getting full sets for them. Same for, I want to get 32X, and there are some titles I really do want to get for that, but I'm not really focusing on that. It's not part of my main goal at the moment. There are I would say three major categories. 3 or 4 major categories you have with collecting. You have absolute dross, you have fair to middling titles, you have desirable titles that are very common but still, because they were desirable, hold a reasonable price, and then you have like the rare and desirable titles that are expensive. So examples are your drosses, things like your FIFA and all that kind of stuff that's really easy and loads of them about and they're cheap to pick up. Your kind of mid-tier games would be something along the lines of I would actually probably say Super Mario World. That's a fairly common and cheap and easy to get hold of title. And let's try and think of some others. Sort of things like Star Fox is a really cheap, and I mean that's actually a really desirable game, but it's very common, it's very easy to get hold of, and as a result it's fairly cheap. You do then have your kind of mid to high tier stuff, which is stuff that, although it was quite common back in the day, and it's relatively easy to get hold of, it is still quite desirable. So they generally command higher prices. So for those, you're talking about games around like Zelda Link to the Past, they sort of pull the £40, £30-40 mark. Super Metroid and other games like that. And then you have your expensive rare stuff, such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time and all that kind of stuff. They kind of pull £100 mark. For the SNES, because I'm trying to get the full collection, I have kind of a mix of all sorts range. I don't have any actual really rare expensive games for the SNES. I'm only up to sort of high to mid tier. So we'll just rattle through a load of them, and I'll talk about some of the really sort of important highlights, okay? So we'll blast through the dross really, really quickly, purely and simply because it is dross and it's all really cheap, but it bulks up your collection quite nicely. Some of these I've picked up for like £1 or £2 or £3 and stuff, then we'll get to the mid-tier. So first of all, we have The Big Hurt, which is some sort of baseball game. I have no idea how good or anything that is, or how representative it is of baseball, because I don't play baseball. NHLPA Hockey, again, this is a super cheap game, but these are good fun kind of titles as well. I do quite like sports titles, but thankfully they're very, very cheap and easy to come by. I have 4 copies of FIFA, 98, 97, 96, and FIFA International Soccer. I think there's a couple more that I still need to get for that. They actually do start getting a little bit rarer, but they're not expensive. They're just rarer. Super Soccer, Striker, Madden 95. I have quite a few football games, but I'm really not a football fan. I really actually quite dislike football. But again, they're cheap. They're bulk up buys. You can get them just to add to the collection. I'll generally pick up a couple of good titles and then pick up some sort of cheap couple of pound things. I picked up PGA Tour Golf, and that was £2. NBA Jam. And that's a really popular game, and that's absolutely everywhere. And it's supposed to be really, really good as well. So I've got that one. Sensible World of Soccer, another football game. Pebble Beach Golf Links, again another golf game. Nigel Mansell's World Championship, is it? Yeah. So, and again, that's some sort of Formula One racing game. I do know a lot about Formula One. I know who Nigel Mansell is, but back then racing games were really nothing to shout out about. So we're now onto the mid-tier stuff. A lot of this stuff, or low mid-tier stuff, a lot of this stuff is still relatively cheap. You can pick it up sub £20. These are kind of, I won't call them filler. That was the filler. Most of this stuff is all half reasonable titles. Some of them are amazing, but they were cheap. Right, so I've got Super Mario World, which is, given you've got to have Super Mario World. I've got Super Mario All-Stars, which has got the Lost Levels plus Super Mario 1, 2 and 3. Off the NES and like a Redux version of those, and then I have Super Mario All-Stars with Super Mario World. I also have Super Mario Paint as well, which I don't think that actually has any Mario levels in it, but you can do. It's effectively just paint. So yeah, it's UKB. So yeah, it's just effectively paint, but there's also a really cool little music suite in there, so you can make music tracks using sound effects from Mario, which is dead good. Just good fun to play around with. We have a couple of Tiny Toons games. We have Looney Tunes Roadrunner. I know absolutely nothing about that, other than it was, again, reasonably cheap. And Buster's Loose, which is a Tiny Toons game. Again, don't know much about those, but they were sort of, £6-7, nothing expensive. The Addams Family, Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt. Again, I have no reason to assume that's going to be a good game, but again, it was cheap, so that got picked up. Desert Fighter, again, that looks kind of a bit like a shmup from what I can remember. So, yep, that might be good for a laugh, or maybe not, I don't know. So I need to try that out. Harley's Humongous Adventure, or Harley's Homunculus Adventure, I don't think that's what it's called. Again, I have no reason to believe that that's any good. I believe it's just like a platformer game. It might be very good, but I've not had a chance to play it. A big problem with the SNES is that the output doesn't generally work on modern day flat screen TVs. You need an upscaler to get it to work, because otherwise they just don't know what it is, basically. Or you have to run them through a CRT telly. Now, I do have 2 CRT tellies, I just have nowhere to set them up. So as soon as we move to a new place and I'm going to get a full game room, I'll be able to have my CRT tellies, I'll be able to get the SNES hooked up, and I'll be able to play all of these amazing or not so amazing games. Vortex, which is a Super FX based game, and it's a 3D mech game where you wander around and shoot stuff and the such. Again, I have no reason to believe that's very good. It's supposed to look quite good, but it's not particularly amazing. Rise of the Robots, which is an absolute tragic piece of software. What this game wasn't going to do, it was going to revolutionise the one-on-one fighting genre. It was going to be the best thing ever made since sliced bread, and then it came out and it turned out it really wasn't. Wing Commander, The Secret Missions, which is... I believe I've talked about this before. Again, it was just Wing Commander that was on the Amiga, only it's on the SNES, and it's some different, the secret missions. I think you can get Wing Commander as well for the SNES, so I'll need to look out for that at some point to complete that little section. Dragon, we all know Dragon, that was a really, really good game. I only played it on the Mega Drive, and it was really good. It's one of those games you have to kind of sink a bit of time into, get used to the kind of mechanics of it, but once you do get into it, that's actually a really good, enjoyable game. It's quite hard as well. Street Racer, which is a knockoff of Mario Kart, supposed to be really good. Again, not played it, but it's very available, very cheap. And Jurassic Park, again, which is supposed to be quite hard. And that's got like a groovy top-down thing where you wander around Jurassic Park trying to stay alive and doing little puzzles. It's supposed to be quite good. So that's the filler, and that's the mid-tier, cheap, dodgy mid-tier stuff. We're now on to the kind of the more expensive. Some of this stuff isn't that expensive, but these are the more killer apps. And obviously Super Mario was quite a killer app, and I think that's it. That's the only stuff from that list that you kind of go, wow, that's a killer system seller. So we have Pilot Wings. Now this was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, and that's a really good game. Really, really good game. I love Pilot Wings. I used to play that a lot when I was a kid around at a friend's house, getting the jetpack. get as high as he could, wait for it to run out of fuel, see how long it would take for you to plummet to your death. But it is a really good game. It's like a kind of a 4-3D kind of flight game where you learn to fly hang gliders and all that kind of stuff. It's real good fun. It's a different pace. It's good. F-Zero, we all know what F-Zero is. Again, I believe that was a launch title as well, I think. That's an exceptional racer. It's really, really, really good. So definitely, and again, cheap as chips, that one. But it's a system seller. It's a really good game. Same with Star Fox, Starwing. So many different names for things. So yeah, Starwing it was called in the UK. And again, I think that was the first FX chip, Super FX chip. It was a late launch, and that's a really, really good game. As we all know, Stunt Race FX, another FX game. Mentioned it earlier. It's kind of it is a 3D polygon based racing game. And it's okay. It's good fun. It's it's a little janky, but it's not bad. Street Fighter 2. It's in pretty ropey condition, but it's cheap as chips. I'll probably pick that up at some point again in a kind of a job lot when I buy them. So if it's better than that, I'll keep that one and get rid of this, or just hang on to that. I also have Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which is the more desirable one. It's slightly more expensive because you get the increased speed, but also because it's unlocked the bosses as well, and it's just generally a much better game. And then Killer Instinct as well. This really was a killer app. I remember when that came out, it was really a big deal, and that was very, very good. It was the first kind of new IP in the sort of fighting genre, which was able to take the fight to Street Fighter 2. Next we have a port from the PC and the Amiga. That's SimCity. That's an exceptional game. It is quite cheap as well, actually. It's not a very expensive game. You can get hold of this quite easily. But that's really, really, really good. As I've said before in other videos, I rate this more than the Amiga version and the PC version. It's really, really good. A really, really good port. It's exceptional as that. Super Alistair, which is a shmup, like a top-down shooter, I believe. Again, I haven't had a chance to play with this. I remember it from back in the day, or I remember the cover. Used to see it in magazines a lot, and I thought, okay, that looks interesting from memory serve. I was like, that looked like something I wanted to play. Again, I can't wait to get this hooked up to the CRT and play that one. That's a really cool looking game. Now we're on to kind of the sort of the best stuff that I have. This is the kind of more expensive stuff that are relatively common titles, but they're not sort of cheap stuff. In amongst that, I don't think I probably paid more than sort of 15-20 quid for any individual title in amongst all of that lot that we've just gone through there. So I mean, some of them were £2 and some of them were a little more expensive, but nothing that was much more than sort of 15 quid, I don't think. Super Mario Kart, you've got to have Super Mario Kart. It's arguably one of the best games on the system. It's a really, really fun game. It spanned, it created a legacy basically. There's been one on every major Nintendo system since the Super Nintendo, and it's a really exceptional game. Super Metroid, you've got to have that. Super Metroid. Again, this is sort of the second in the series, I think. Because you had the NES version, then I think it came to the Super NES, then after that we got Game Boy version as well. But really, really exceptional game. Very, very good. I started playing through that on the SNES Mini, and really started enjoying it. I got a couple of hours in and then got stuck, and I haven't had a chance to get back to it. But yeah, I mean, everyone knows how good Super Metroid is. Secrets of Evermore. Now this was by Squaresoft. This is sort of you can sort of think of this as a westernized version of Secrets of Mana. It's made by Square, the same people that made Secrets of Mana, and a lot of the stuff, the UI and all that kind of stuff was transferred over into this game. But this was actually made in the US by a US dev team. There's a load of sort of iffy statements about it being a sequel to Secrets of Mana, but it's not. It is a standalone title, but Secrets of Evermore, it's a really, really good game. It's not too expensive. You can pick that up relatively cheaply, but it's an action RPG, a very, very good game. Zelda Link to the Past. You thought I'd forgotten it? No, Zelda Link to the Past, you've got to have that for the SNES. And again, that's a very desirable title. Generally trades for somewhere in the region of £35 to £50, depending on the quality of the cartridge. And it is what it is. Zelda is Zelda. So yeah, really, really classic title. That's my entire collection for the Super Nintendo. I've got some junk, got some good stuff, and got some really, really good stuff. I don't have any sort of rare games for the SNES. I do for other systems, and I'll show you them in other videos. But for the SNES, I don't have anything particularly rare and that expensive. It's generally the sort of £40-50 mark is like the top end stuff. I'm looking to rectify that over the next year. But yeah, so that's the Super Nintendo. It's a beast. It's an amazing system. Mine's a little bit beat up. You can see I don't know if you can, the camera will pick this up, but it's a little bit yellowed at the bottom. So I'm possibly looking at picking another one up, but generally it's in pretty good shape. It's a cracking system. You can pick up the SNES Mini possibly nowadays. You might be able to find one knocking about that's not too expensive, so that'll give you a good idea about some of the more expensive games on there, like Zelda and Metroid are on there, so Super Mario Kart, Super Mario World, so there's loads of games on there, and Star Fox as well. So you might, if you've never played on SNES, I would recommend maybe grabbing one of those. It's easy, hook it up to HDMI. That gives you a real good flavour of what's available on the system, and then if that tickles your fancy, pick one up. They're not too expensive. Games can be, but it's an amazing machine, an absolute beast of a machine. And yeah, so that was my Super Nintendo collection for the end of 2017. So yes, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Rate, comment, and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. I will be doing some more of my retro collection while the company's sort of gearing up and doing some more work, so that we can then start getting back into the devlogs. I've been talking to Josh a little bit over the past couple of days, and he's not feeling too well at the moment, so get well soon, Josh. And then as soon as we're all up and running, then yes, we will be away with that, and everything's gravy. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take it easy. Bye bye.